paddle is one of those really, really crucial pieces of equipment that you need when you go canoeing. It is the means for you to get from place to place. We can't just essentially get in our canoe and just drift to where we need to go. We do need to provide our own power, which is by us using a paddle. Okay, so we're looking at these paddles and we're looking at the blade types right now. So don't get concerned about the length of the paddles. And you can see that there are different length paddles. And we'll talk about that. I like to divide my paddles into two basic types. My shallow water paddles and my deep water paddles. My shallow water paddles, which I would use in shallow water obviously, and white water, are on the left. As you can see, they're flat bottom. There's two there that are made out of wood. One is made out of plastic. You'll find those most of the time in your big box stores, Walmart, Dick's Sporting Goods and things of that nature. That one even lost the T-handle that came with it. I don't use that at all. I keep it for demos. You'll see the laminate one in the middle. That's 3 different pieces of wood that they put together. And then the other one, which has been... The paddles to the right are my deep water paddles. And you can see, moving from left to right, there is 2 beaver tail paddles. There is an otter tail paddle in the middle. And then on my Maine guide paddles, which are the longest paddles that I own, again, there are 2 beaver tails. They allow me to put the paddle deeper in the water and move more water below the surface, which propels me further. So when we were talking about the paddles being deep water paddles, shallow water paddles, I wanted to expand on that a little bit. We're traveling in white water and we want to be able to actually turn and maneuver more quickly than we are when we're tripping on like a lake or a nice big fat lazy river that's deep. Okay? We want a shorter blade because what we want to do is we want to be able to have the ability to move that water quickly. So if we have a longer blade, it could get hung up in the water while we're trying to move. A shorter blade allows us to actually move that water quickly because it's up here on the surface of the water. So in case I need to draw very quickly to turn, or if I need to pry to turn the opposite direction, I can do it with relative ease as opposed to using a longer blade. However, if I'm doing a long trip and I'm doing hundreds of paddle strokes, maybe even thousands by the end of my trip, however many days I'm going, I want to be able to move more water more efficiently, and I can do that with a longer blade, such as this otter tail. So I get below the surface of the water, way below, and I'm actually able to move that water. Okay, does it make sense? I think so. So again, when we start to think about these things, and your paddle is going to be indicative of the use that you want it to do. If you're doing long trips in deep water, you're going to want to have something like this. Shorter, shallow water, you're going to have a shorter paddle. But this, as far as for long trips, let's talk about one of the old-fashioned ways of actually how people measured paddles. So you would stand up and you would actually take your paddle and you put it on the ground or you put it on your toe and you would actually stand it up, and it would be somewhere between your nose and your eyes, and then you would be in the ballpark for having the correct size paddle. Except for one thing, it doesn't work with all paddles because of their blade types. As you can see here, this is the Maine guide paddle. Okay, it's a Northwoods paddle by Tenney. It's a little bit taller than me, doesn't it? Well, that whole thing doesn't exactly work, but this paddle is sized for me. This is a whitewater paddle. Again, doesn't quite get there. This one, my otter tail, it's pretty much dead balls on. That's just the way it goes. okay? 3 different blade types, 3 different overall lengths of paddle, except they are sized correctly. One of the other ways that you can actually measure yourself, which I find to actually be better when you're in a canoe shop, and hopefully they have a canoe on the floor that you can actually sit in. But one of the things that you can do is you can take your paddle that you're looking at, you put it on the ground, and you can see that this is right in that general area, and that paddle will probably work for you. You also have to take other things into consideration. How you're sitting in your canoe. Are you going to be sitting in the canoe on the seat all the time? Or are you going to be kneeling in the canoe? Because when you're kneeling in the canoe, you've just changed the height of yourself sitting in that canoe. The other thing is too, you may be over to the side, in which you're going to want a shorter paddle, because what you're doing is you're canting the canoe over so that you can actually make it so that it slices through the water. All right? These are all things that you need to take into consideration. So the easiest way that I have found to size a paddle for you, regardless of the blade length, regardless of the grip, is simply take the paddle, hold the grip, put your hands here by the throat, hold your arms up. Your arms are nice and vertical, everything appears to be square. That paddle will work for you. If my hand was like this, it would be too short. If my hands were like this, the paddle would be too long. This is what we're looking for, and this will work on any grip. Even the paddles that are above my head. I'm going to show you that now. All right, here's one of my Maine guide paddles, my Northwoods Paddle by Shaw and Tenney. I know what you're saying. You're saying, hey, your arms are too far out, Brian. It's too big, it's too long. No, it's not. You know why? Because I use it when I stand up in the canoe. That's why. However, if I want to paddle with this normally, my hand is back here, hand is here. Look where my arms are. It's because it has a Northwoods grip to it. I'm going to show you some things about the grips. And again, this is where you have to start picking and choosing your paddles for what you want them to do. So let's take a look at grips right now. So let's take a look at these grips, starting from left to right. It's a pear-shaped grip. Another style of that follows it, followed by another style. Now we look at the paddle in the middle, the otter tail, and you'll see that I made that paddle and I put a modified Voyager's grip to it. So it is a little longer than normal, and it actually does have more or less a pear shape at the top, but it's just wider and it's flatter too. So then moving along, you'll see the Shaw and Tenney Northwoods paddle, and then you'll see another Maine paddle that I got from Poland Paddle out of Maine. Both of those are Voyager handle style, Northwoods style. Again, they go by different names. The one to the extreme right is the one that's even longer, and that paddle is 4 inches longer than the Shaw and Tenney one. So yeah, and there you go. Now we're going to talk about the grips and how they're used, at least like I said, the Northwoods grip and the modified grip. Paddling over the course of time, you know, you're going to manipulate your paddle, and after a while, after several hours of paddling or many miles, you know, your hands are going to start to get a little bit cramped, and they're going to start to get a little stiff. These leave you not a lot of room for adjustments while you're doing it. Very simply, that's the way you're going to move it. I'm just going to go straight into the Voyager's grip, or the Northwoods grip, or the Maine guide grip, whichever way you want to look at it, whatever you want to call it. What's nice about this is that I can take this, and while I'm paddling, I can grip it like this, grip. But down here, it gives me the freedom that as I am paddling, all I have to do is roll my hand. I can actually free my hand up, and it eases up on the aches and the pains as well. That's why I actually like this grip. I can accomplish that with my modified grip as well. This has basically like a pear shape up here, but I did put a little extension on there, widened it, thinned it, so I can do the same thing. I can come down here, I can do the same thing. All right, so for the 3 parts of paddling, we're going to have the catch, the power, and then the recovery. And you're getting the most bang for your buck between your knee and your buttocks back here. So the first thing that we do is we start with a catch. So the catch is just going to be before the knee. Then your blade comes back. That is the power segment, and then finally when your paddle comes back up out of the water, or on some strokes you leave the paddle in the water, you come back, and that is the recovery. So it's catch, power, recovery. So that's it. That's how I size my paddles. I hope it's helpful for the rest of you to come to a conclusion on how big a paddle that you're going to get. Remember, the paddle that you're going to use is going to be indicative of what you want that paddle to do in the activity of the paddling that you're doing. If you're just doing deep water cruising, if you're doing shallow white water, or just shallow little rivers or creeks, or however, that's up to you. Choose your paddle, choose it wisely, use your paddle, okay? You'll have a connection with the paddle. One will be more maybe your favorite paddle, and you'll always take it with you. And here's something that you need to remember: always carry 2 paddles. You don't want to be out there and God forbid, something happens to your paddle, and then you have no way to paddle your canoe. We'll talk about maintenance of paddles later. We'll talk about things that you shouldn't do with your paddle, like using it as a pole, especially if you make your own paddle. And we're going to continue on. So thanks for your views and your comments. Click the little bell for notifications. Start a conversation, ask questions. However, appreciate your views and your comments. So see you on the next one.